Ladies and gentlemen, we're keeping the best part to the last here in the afternoon. I know it's 4 o'clock, okay, it's a hard time. We're all looking and saying, okay, it's getting late in the afternoon. But I actually think we're getting to the real end of IoT. We're talking about the smart home. We're talking about some really interesting and some, I'd probably say some fantastic innovations in the gadget side and so on. And this is what really is hitting IoT. It's coming home. It's coming to the individual users. They're seeing it within their homes right now. It's not industrial IoT, in the manufacturing, it's not drones flying over our heads and so on. This is actually, we're touching it, okay? And I think that's the big difference here. And so I'm really excited to listen to the panel, what you've got to say. And so I think with that, I'd like to hand over to maybe each panelist just to introduce yourselves and then just give a brief description of where does your business sit in this concept of the smart home?
Hi, my name is Brian Fitzpatrick. I'm an investor in
Probably could you use the microphone, Sir Brian? Thanks.
Is that better? EmoShape is a technology, it's a cube that houses an emotional processing unit and allows people to interact with technology using voice. So you say, EmoShape, play me Magic by Coldplay, and it will play Magic by Coldplay on your television where the cube is plugged into. And then it'll answer questions, it'll play videos, and we're going to be introducing what's most relevant for this panel for this day, the ability to turn things on and off. So if you want to turn your Wemo light sockets on and off, if you want to turn your Philips lights on and off, we'll be forming connections with each of those. So you can actually just say, do an action, perform an action, and it will perform the action for you. And it's done on a much more personal basis. So instead of just giving a command, you have a conversation. So it's much more to do with having an interface in your house that's more a friend rather than something that's just a robot. And with the camera, we're able to scan people's faces to see what their emotional response is. So if you, for example, we give you the weather and you smile, then the response that comes back is much more upbeat and this is going great and it's all wonderful. If you've got a frown or confusion or you're about to pick it up and chuck it out the window, it gives a more easy kind of, well, this is new for me and I'm learning as well, to try and give it a bit more personality. So yeah, that's what we're about.
That's great, thanks.
Hi, I'm Andy from Bedit. We do a consumer-focused sleep monitor. So you basically take this thin sensor strip and you put it right under your top bed sheet, and it measures your sleep quality automatically. You combine it with your smartphone, so basically connected via Bluetooth. It assesses your sleep quality based on metrics like the heart rate, respiration cycles, movement, so whatever you have there. Simon wouldn't let me on the wearables panel since this is a non-wearable sensor. It doesn't require you to actually wear anything and doesn't require skin contact. So it's actually a very sensitive pressure sensor that senses the different movement that your body causes. So for example, your heart is actually quite a big of a muscle that we can then sense the movement from. In terms of smart home, we're actually doing very little, which equals to none, which makes me a very bad fit for the panel, but makes me a very good fit because I'm happy to talk about why we're not doing anything there, and we're more interested about, in terms of Apple, obviously, like research kit and health. But yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks. First time in Edinburgh.
Yes, sir?
Hey everyone, my name's Yasser. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Den. So at Den, we basically identified that light switches and plug sockets have been around for over 100 years. And since then, technology has improved at such a rapid rate, but our light switches and plug sockets haven't. They're quite dated. They haven't taken advantage of modern day technology. So what we're doing is bringing them into the 21st century. And there's loads of cool things you can do with our switches. For example, when you leave the house, you can turn off all your lights and all your appliances from the touch of one button. When you go to bed, you make sure you're not wasting electricity by leaving your lights and appliances on. Other things, we can send you push notifications to your smartphone to tell you that you've left your iron on for longer than an hour. Something might not be right there, so we give you the option to turn it off. There's other things, convenience, you can turn your light switch off from your bed. There's safety elements for elderly and disabled people. Our ultimate aim is to replace existing light switches and plug sockets around the world and to install our switches by standard in all the new homes that are being built. We've just raised £500,000 on Cedars, which is a crowdfunding platform. And we've been nominated for the London Innovators Award, which is great. The video is on Cedars. The campaign is still live. If you guys want to check that out, yeah, thank you very much.
So I'm a tech entrepreneur and a blogger, Web3 IoT, and I've been, I suppose, just observing from afar this space, And what seems to be very obvious to me is that there's a land grab taking place, which is not necessarily a good thing for the consumer, because we're seeing increasing fragmentation, and it's just getting worse and worse. And essentially, I think Google with Nest, and Apple with HomeKit, Samsung with Smart Things. You've got Zigbee, Z-Wave. I could go on. And for the OEM, not necessarily the prime OEM. What I mean is the accessory ecosystem. If you are building products for the smart home, which standards do you support? And you can't support all of them, so you kind of have to choose. And it's also confusing for the consumer, because you don't want to buy a bit of kit, like a Belkin plug, for example, and then suddenly find that Belkin don't support the standard that's supported in the plug, and it becomes obsolete. So I think a lot of consumers are just backing off until this kind of war of standards has been won. And I just find, like I said, the whole thing pretty fascinating. And I think that is something that needs to be resolved. And I suspect it'll probably be a 3-horse race, although I wouldn't rule out Microsoft, but I suspect probably it's going to be an Apple home, a Samsung home, probably running on a Tizen, or a Google home, with Nest being the heart of the network. So we shall see.
I think you heard it first here, the 3-horse race coming in. Just out of curiosity, for the audience, raise of hands, yourselves as individuals, consumers, how many of you have actually got a smart home lighting solution? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4. How about a heating solution, remotely managed? So a bit more on the heating side. And how about a security solution? So a couple of hands. So it's there, it's coming slowly and so on. I think the point you raised, Simon, the challenge of not having a standard, is that really, I mean, you're coming to market with products, hopefully adding that interest with the consumers, but is it going to be a long time? How long are we going to see before the home becomes really an integrated smart home where things are talking to one another? And how do you see that happening? Do we need a standard for the home? Right.
Yeah, I think standards are extremely important in any evolving technology, and particularly in this one. To pick up on the point of how long is it going to take before we've truly smart homes, I think we have to a certain degree already. I've got 8 applications running sound and light and the whole lot, just because I like buying that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But the problem is it doesn't link to each other well. If you want to do something, you've got to go in, you've got to program, da-da. It's quite complicated at the moment, and that's holding people back who aren't early adopters. What we need is some nice, simple interfaces, nice, easy ways to be able to interface and talk to the home.
Okay. Auntie, I know. Well, you're coming against smart home. Yeah.
I'll come back to this. I'll let you speak first.
Sorry, what was the question?
It's really about, do we need the standards to actually progress the market itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've come across people who say, oh, well, I can program my home using if this, then that, blah, blah, blah. And you think, yeah, but you're a geek. Most people just want the thing to work seamlessly. They can't be bothered to set up. They can't be bothered. If the thing doesn't work, it's just going to lead to immense frustration. Okay. And I think at the heart of the smart home, it's got to be AI. And those companies that excel in machine learning are going to win the smart home war. And I think, again, well, don't discount Microsoft, because they've got their Siri contender. Katana, I think it's called. Cortana, there you go. Just in itself, the fact that I'm not entirely sure about the brand is a concern for Microsoft. And then, of course, Google. I would say Google's ahead of the game in terms of machine learning. They're just hoovering up all the best talent right now. And Apple seemed to be lagging behind somewhat, because a lot of the stuff that makes Siri work is not owned by Apple, surprisingly. It's owned by Nuance Technologies. Yes, I know, extraordinary. Yeah. So it seems to be a kind of a strategic blind spot for Apple. They need to raise their game, because the smart home of tomorrow is going to be powered by artificial intelligence.
Apple buys a lot of companies and you never hear about it.
They don't own Nuance. Samsung, I suspect, will buy Nuance. Apple could afford to buy Nuance, of course, but there's so much kind of redundancy in the organization that it would just be a pain for Apple to acquire it. But it would be actually very strategic for Samsung. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a quick multi-billion-dollar acquisition and swiped a lot of the Siri components as part of that acquisition. So we'll see.
I think one of the interesting things to point out is the three players that you identified, the Apple, the Google, and the Samsung in this space. If you look at what they've been doing in the last couple of months, Samsung has announced their own IoT platform, which was a bit of a revelation that they'd actually go and build one themselves and actually set it in motion. There have been rumors right now that Google's about to launch their own IoT platform to actually integrate things. Yeah, not for the house, not for the home. Slightly wider than that, but really, and we're waiting, says, when is Apple going to come with their play as well with this? And then you really see that three-horse race coming. Because I think your point, it's really bringing that intelligence to the home and so on. Now, with your products here, I'm just asking, how much intelligence are you going to be bringing, further from what there already is? So Antti, probably to you. I mean, is it just the monitoring of my sleep, or are you going to build other things on top of that?
Well, that's
intelligence. Sorry.
That's the sort of problem that if you look at Beddit and if you look at smart home, and we are just another gadget, right? Yeah. Then the problem is, like, even if you had AI, how would you harness it into use? Like, does the AI learn, your preferences? I mean, in terms of like people waking up, you will like to wake up to the loudest alarm clock there is, while you have difficulty sleeping and you don't need an alarm clock, whereas you will have some other experience. So it really becomes like this, how do we learn to customize the experience without you actually having to do anything? And that's one of the major issues we've had at Beddit, is not actually having the most complete data set or the most accurate data set. It's more about how do you put it into use in front of the consumer that they actually use it, right? So in the beginning, we got a lot of complaints about, oh, you don't have the clinical sleep staging. Like we're gonna know, we're gonna need to know exactly how much REM sleep we got. People care about that because that's the only thing they know. But the problem is that then they don't really care. And the biggest issue became that, how do we make this sensor into something that you don't really need to calibrate, or you don't need even actually need to use it, right? Now I forgot the original question.
I mean, basically, how much intelligence are you going to be putting to the services around that?
And that's the thing. Companies will be directed where the money is at, so what the consumer decides to buy, which is, again, a part of the user experience. And for us, I mean, we could do the obvious, and as you're, waking up from a light state to sleep with Beddit, we could, wake up you to the smell of your coffee machine brewing that, coffee. But the issue there would be that you'd probably wake up to the sound when you're grinding the beans rather than the smell of the coffee. Now, the other thing is, obviously, we could do the medical approach where we can look at your sleep quality and, say that, oh my God, you had 3 hours of snoring. Yeah. Or we could affect your blinds, that, start opening the blinds at a certain angle at a certain time. So it really depends. Like, it's a money question, to be honest.
So one of the things we're doing that involves intelligence is the fact that from our plug sockets, we can detect whether an appliance has been left on the standby mode. For example, if you've got a phone charger plugged in, you're charging your phone, but then you leave to go to work without actually turning the switch off, the charger is then consuming energy for the 8 hours that you're at work. If our switches can detect that the appliance has been left in the standby mode and then automatically flick itself off, that's when things start becoming really intelligent, and it totally wipes out the whole standby issue, the fact that we're wasting so much energy and really harming the environment because we're leaving our appliances on standby. So yeah, we're definitely involving some sort of intelligence in our product, and there'll be a lot more to come in the future.
Very interesting. Brian?
Yeah, AI is a particular interest for mine. I've invested in 3 artificial intelligence companies already. Oh. It's a huge area, and I think it's very, very interesting as how it's going to develop. So if you look at the Beddit solution, for example, if that is being centrally monitored, then if you have a bad night's sleep, the AI might be a little bit more intrusive and speak to you about taking naps or getting to bed early or reminding you. That could be really annoying for some people, so that's where the emotional processing has to come in. Some people are going to jump into AI and it's going to be their best friend. Their best friend. Maybe their only friend if it's their best friend. But, it's definitely going to be part of their lives. And so some will let it in and they will allow it to ask it questions, and we'll come up with solutions like the one that you're describing as well about turning the iron off. Turn the iron off, and then the message that comes through will be a spoken command saying, I turned your iron off, it was on for an hour, hope that's okay.
So that's the issue we're facing. We don't want to piss people off
by
turning it off when they're using it. So it's all about timing and accuracy.
Yeah, and I think this is where EmoShape fits to bind all these together, because you can have 20 gadgets, but you don't have 20 interfaces. You want to be able to say, do this thing, and then it has to happen. And I think that's where artificial intelligence will be able to resolve and solve many of these issues. Not all of them. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on it. But by having an emotional processing unit and being able to scan the person's face to see the reaction to something that was said or something that was done, you can do, right, we're going to do less of that. We're going to do less proactive stuff, and we're just going to be asked. And that's how each processor is binded to the user, the person who bought the actual unit, and it will only take emotional responses from them, and it will learn from that person. So it builds up a profile of what they like, what they don't like, what you can do, how far you can push it, and then when you've pushed it a bit too far, then have a conversation about adjusting that. I think that's something that will be a lot more important in the future.
Okay. Simon, do you want to make a comment? Or?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of artificial unintelligence for a while. It's going to be immensely frustrating, because it's going to be a little bit like having a slightly dysfunctional but very eager sort of manservant who is there to please but just keeps screwing up the whole time because he's not quite joining joining the dots. Things like adjust the temperature. Coffee, the coffee machine. You wake up in the morning and you've had a bad night's sleep, so your smart coffee machine will fix you an extra strong cup of coffee, and you think, well, that's nice, and I understand the logic behind that, but I don't actually like the taste of very bitter, strong coffee. Why did you do that, you stupid thing? So, like I said, there's just going to be a lot of confusion until finally the AI gets so smart and so intelligent that it becomes so seamless that we're going, you knew I wanted my coffee just exactly like that without me even, doing anything. But I think that in the meantime, there are so many little tasks that plague our lives, such as switching energy supplier. Like who enjoys doing that? Our smart home will be constantly running algorithms to almost conduct auctions on our behalf to switch and find the cheapest energy deal, perhaps on a monthly or hourly or moment by moment basis. Just in the background, that sort of stuff. It'll order, there's a product, it's a little bit gimmicky. It's by QWERTY, and you can buy a smart egg tray to put in your fridge, and it's got little sensors at the bottom, so it knows whether the egg tray is empty or full. And when you're getting low on eggs, it just tweets you or gives you a notification on your phone to say, remember to buy eggs. Now, the next step, of course, is that your smart home will be constantly monitoring your calorie intake, and it'll know when stocks are low, and it'll order food, and it'll be delivered by drone, and everything will be wonderful. But in theory, until your smart home conspires against you, and let's not go there. The evil smart home.
I know.
Let's not go there.
Well, at the moment, at least you've got something you can vent your anger towards the unintelligent machine to begin with. That's probably the first stop. Audience, any questions for the panel? Yeah.
Well, it's not so much a question, more as a comment.
Uh-huh.
I think the real challenge with all of this is that there are so many opportunities in so many different areas that they don't really work unless they're kind of integrated. And you're talking about standards, which is the basis for that kind of integration. But it's how you get started in any one of them to get there. We can sort of see what the end vision might be, but how do you, so I mean, you're, for example, you're going to create yet another standard around light switches and plugs and how they talk to each other. And is your stuff going to talk to, the smart other bits in the household? Probably not, unless,
I don't see there's a need for it to. We don't see there's a huge need for it to. They're going to talk to the plugs themselves, the plugs that you plug into the sockets. We want them to communicate with each other, which, is another standard in the future. The sort of things that we might want is for it to talk to Nest. So Nest thermostat, if the Nest thermostat identifies that no one's in the home and it turns the heating off, it should talk to our plugs, the plugs and the light switches to turn the lights and appliances off also. There's also the Nest smoke alarm. When the smoke alarm sounds, it's found that there's a fire in the house. We want it to talk to our product to light up a pathway. If it's at night time and the alarm starts going off, we want it to turn off all the lights in the house so that they can exit really quickly.
Okay, but that's a perfect example. I mean, you've just outlined 4 different systems you
Yeah.
You know, if you want to talk to plugs, I mean, most appliances, at least in the UK, come with plugs on them already. That means you've got to do.
It's a long-term plan, yeah. Very long-term, yeah.
I think with a question. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to build on that.
Yeah.
So, as a developer, but let's say I would like to see that my smart home, as an environmentalist, I'd like to see that my washing machine comes on when there's more renewable energy on the grid. So if I'm going to build, if I'm choosing what smart home technology I want to use, I will pick the one with the most open standards and the most easiest to develop in that sense. So I know you say, well, you're a bunch of geeks, so people want one stuff. The same on the other hand, if a developer is building new interesting stuff, that does filter through. So it's worth.
The way I'm looking at it is that you're going to have, when you go to house hunting, there is going to be a conversation with the estate agent that goes something like, really like that house, what operating standard does it run? Is it an Apple house? No kidding.
Well.
Google.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because all my gadgets are compatible, so I need to make sure that the house I'm moving to, everything seems. You will have to make that selection, and the reason is because of business models. And the reason why they're not playing nice, and why Samsung bought SmartThings, which is supposed to be an open standard, by the way, or was until it was acquired, that'll get integrated with Tizen, no question, and become another proprietary standard. It's because the stakes are so huge. If you can imagine a Google house, every acquisition that flows through that house, whether it's the eggs, the energy supply, they will take a little micro, probably using the blockchain, perhaps, some virtual currency, and they'll be taking little, and by the way, every single smart gadget in your home will be heavily subsidized or even free, so that you have a Google product that'll take a little commission. Apple you have to pay through the nose, but they don't do the ad support model. But yeah, it'll be a Samsung or an Apple or a Google, maybe a Microsoft home. Who knows?
The parallel, just to add to that one, Simon, I think there's a parallel here. If you look at the car industry, okay, if a study that was done by one of the leading car manufacturers, a German one, won't mention the name, but they actually went and they did a study, said, how do people who now buy cars, what do you look for? And if you look 5-10 years back, it would be performance, speed, what sort of petrol consumption and so on. Now it's what sort of connectivity does the car have? What sort of do I have to bring in my own device? What does it connect with? It's changed very much, and now it's saying, what do I connect with and how can I connect with it? I think exactly what you were saying.
Did you go to World Mobile Congress this year?
Yeah.
I didn't go, but apparently there was a car on every single stand. It's so gratuitous. Yeah. Why is that car? Yeah. I don't know. They told us to put it there.
Yeah. So I think there's a question down there. There's one behind you, Nicholas. Hold on a sec. Yeah.
It was just the whole kind of IoT operating system. Microsoft has one. Google has announced one just yesterday. But the interesting thing about the Google one was that they actually paid massive attention to the actual interconnectedness of everything, and they've got their whole API, and it's a built-in layer to this operating system to allow interconnection between different proprietary standards, and it all comes under the one umbrella and the one interface in the one app. So I think Google usually see this sort of thing quite early on. I think from a kind of user point of view, when I go out and buy something to add to my home, I need to know that it works with the same apps and the same things that are already there. And if I go and buy sockets, I don't want to know if it works with a mesh. I want it to work with every connected thermostat. And I don't know about Tizen or anything like that, but Google are very open in terms of everything is available and you can add your standard in there. Everything is open and it's all free. So
it's all free. Why? Because they want your data and they want to monetize it, which is fine. If there's a trade,
nothing wrong with that.
It's all good.
I just want to comment on that. That I think that's like when was it you who said we're just a bunch of geeks here? And I think
I said those that want to existed.
Yeah, but I think that's really key here. That no matter how open it is, yes, you'll get developers to do stuff on it. But I think, like I said, with Betty, we've noticed because we're sort of at the gap where we've had a lot of early adopters from our 2013 Indiegogo campaign, where we also raised about $500,000, and then trying to shift that into mass markets, and all of a sudden everything changes. All of a sudden, 90% of your customers will be people who are just like, first of all, I don't understand what this device does. They don't go to the store to look up for a sleep monitor. They want to go buy a pillow or something. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that they don't really care how it works. It just needs to be there. It needs to work. And that's the sort of like, that's the gap that you sort of need to, breach, or sort of like reach here.
Nicola.
So 3 things. First of all, it's called Crossing the Chasm. It comes with everything. There's a book about it, and anybody that hasn't read the book, strongly suggest you read the book. Absolutely right. Everybody.
And even if you do 15 first pages and you're done, you got it.
Exactly. Yeah. You can probably just wiki it at this stage. Second point, developers are critical to make everything work. Problem with developers is, can I make it do something? Doesn't necessarily mean what do people want it to do. And there's a discrepancy there in terms of the understanding, which is good because there's new things that are brought to market, and it's bad because not always you can find money to do those things. And third, the monetization of this type of technology is going to be critical, and it will be, I fully agree, some sort of an Apple, Google, whatever, Facebook kind of separation, and will all be one thing. And unless you're doing standards, or unless you're controlling the flow, unless you're doing some analytics with the data behind it, everything else you're wasting your time, because Samsung will be able to do the hardware cheaper, Apple will be able to source it cheaper, their operating systems are going to have a larger ecosystem, so they'll get quicker traction. So the play is, how do you sell your data, and how you make sure that the data that flows through your devices is monetized with other partners.
I'm not sure that data and selling of data is going to be hugely important. I think security is going to become more on people's radar. Getting an ad served up to you that's relevant to something that you've seen or a website that you've visited, people are okay with that. Or they go on Facebook and they boast about, I get these really high class ads. Facebook must think I'm really high class, and you're getting ones from Massalan and must think you're really poor. But again, they're okay with that. Your sleep, your kids' sleep, the information that we're going to be able to gather through a smartphone, it's a totally different level. If someone's to hack in, or if big corporations are getting to that level of knowledge about who you are and what you do. So the way that we've addressed it is with 3 components. We have the individual, the human, we have the artificial intelligence, which is the software, and then we have the chip, the emotional processing unit, and the emotional processing unit. So within the cube, within the hardware side of it, all sensitive information is stored there, and none of it is let out without first asking the user, can I do this, can I access this? And then the AI takes control of what happens with that. But the AI is on the individual's side. We've taken the decision not to gather information, not to pull information in about the user, about them, because we think security is such an important issue. When you've got a camera trained on somebody and people start setting up cameras around their house because they want to have more tracking, they'll do that if they know it's not going to go out anywhere else, that no one's going to be looking into their house. And so security, and if Google and Apple and Samsung are setting up all these houses and putting in free stuff just so they can track you, at some stage, Panorama or someone's going to do a program that says, do you realize what these guys are getting?
Everyone will know, and they'll buy into it, because we do already.
We do already about advertising. I don't know if we're going to do the same about our home. I think we're going to be a lot more careful and cautious about what's happening with our day-to-day life.
So that's a twofold. You brought up a very good point, but that's a twofold question. Basically, it's a question of how do you perceive human nature moving forward. And on the one hand, people are saying, well, we're inert. We're going to get used to living with the fact that we're spied on and that our data is used to give us free stuff, quote unquote. And the other side is, no, we're going to become more conscious and we're going to become more aware about where our data is going. And the short answer is there's no clear-cut decision, because we're talking about stuff 5, 6, 10 years in the future, and who knows, it might be either way. My opinion is that the existing monetization methods and business models are likely to lead to the former outcome, not the latter, because users are much less aware of the monetary value of their data, and their ability to aggregate and use that is vastly different from our corporation whose entire existence is built on that. So as an example, if you take the Nest monitor, it already does that. It already links with your Google Calendar. It already links, it has an away function, and it knows when you've left the function. It knows when you're in a meeting. If you do your stuff through Google, it knows when you get a booking for your flight confirmation, so it sends you a reminder ahead of time, and all of that is fully integrated with Nest. Now they're talking about introducing a smoke alarm detector in every single room. The sole purpose of that device is not to be a smoke alarm detector, it's to be a platform for smart sensing devices, pressure, humidity, temperature, whatever integration, and all of it flows back to Google, and all of it is used for optimizing the digital experience, which in reality means some form of monetization of the dollars per bit. And how that's all integrated and how it's backhauled, which is why you see Google becoming a mobile virtual operator now in the US. It's about how do you monetize this data, and who owns it, in my opinion, is going to be the people that draw the most cash out of it. But it's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, it's fair. There's different levels as well. On the top level, your social interactions on Facebook, you're going to be careful about those, about them going outside and turning your heating off because you're outside. That will be fine as well. So it's not
it's a grayscale, right? It's not a black or white event.
Yeah.
One of the interesting points here is that we've discussed where the bodies like, companies like Apple, Google, so what about the regulatory body? What about, where are they coming in? Are they going to sit back and wait and see what happens here? Or are we going to see some action where they're going to start saying, well, you actually can't do this and that with the data or with the privacy? Or are they going to be sitting on the fence here and saying, well, let's see what happens in the commercial? I'm just wondering, do the panelists have any comment to that? See, I mean, you said we'll keep the data, you're keeping the data in the home on the actual hardware device. Bedded, I guess that's being transferred to the cloud.
We have several layers of data. So you have the raw data where we can basically see the raw signal that comes from here to your mobile phone, and that shows you like just a force signal that we keep locally.
Okay.
But then the process results, like your heart rate, they're being shipped forward.
They're being shipped forward.
But the most private data, you get to choose what to do with it.
And for the lighting system, for power management, for example?
Plug sockets at the moment, when we're plugging in billions of appliances every single day all around the world, but there's no way to actually extract this data. We don't know when someone's charged their iPhone or someone's turned their TV on. But with our products, we're going to be able to do this. We're going to know if an iPhone 5 charger was used on a Monday morning in France at 7 a.m. and if it was used for 53 minutes and if it consumed X amount of electricity. And we definitely want to get this data into our cloud, and we want to own the data, because you're right, you can make a lot of money from doing it. But yeah, privacy and security is a huge issue.
I mean,
but we definitely want to try and get as much as we can.
And so the question being is that, do you see any regulators going in, starting to put?
It's hard to say. You probably will.
After you've had your arm programs,
There was a big issue with Nest in the media. People were getting really annoyed that Nest were taking all this data, but it's going to happen and it's going to make the world a better place. But people are going to get really annoyed with it.
We take the one example. Germany was rolling out smart meters, and the plan was to roll out smart meters to actually power consumption at home. It was stopped because the information that was being collected could not be collected and gathered the way it was, and the whole program was stalled by the German government saying, we're not going to collect data that way, we need to rethink this again. That has put probably smart meter rollouts in Germany back maybe 4 or 5 years at the moment. Is that a potential scenario we might see within the consumer home to avoid data being out and to avoid Google's, Apple's, Samsung's becoming the masters of our data in effect?
I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to get stopped like that. No. The data we're extracting is not going to do any harm to the consumers. It's going to, if anything, benefit the consumers, benefit us as a company, benefit the manufacturer of these appliances. It's not going to do them any harm. So I don't see why it should go in that direction.
I think it'll be a simple equation: trading privacy for convenience and cost. I was always an Apple fan. And I transitioned over to Google, and it was really the iPhone 6 where I looked at an iPhone 6 because I don't do contracts, and I thought, well, out of contract, what am I going to pay? $600, $650 for the top spec phone? I look at Nexus, 150 quid, no brainer. I look at a MacBook Air, I mean, how much top spec? Couple of grand. I look at a Chromebook, 150 quid. Everything's stored in the cloud, so if it gets stolen, smashed, lost, I don't lose any data because it's all automatically backed up, and I just, 150, less than 150 quid. It's almost a disposable technology, and so is the phone. When you buy an Apple product, if it even gets scratched, you kind of have a heart attack. And it's because I know that every single thing that I type into my Chromebook and my phone is being tracked and monetized. And that is the decision that I have made. Whether it turned out to be the right one or not, who knows? But there are other people who feel more strongly about their data, and they'll pay whatever the premium is to give them the OEM the margin. They don't have to monetize the data. They make money from the margin that they make from selling the hardware. I think there was a question, Scott, in the back.
Hey. It's a fairly loaded question, so bear with me. If you can imagine a spectrum of consumer, customer, right? Then you have the data, the platforms, the data, and the white goods, the devices. When we're talking about forward and backward integration, who do you think has the most power, Samsung notwithstanding? Because I work with a fairly powerful supplier of white goods who have no interest in connecting to the internet. They think that the device quality, the product-led device quality is good enough, and they don't care if it connects to the home or not. They're like, this thing does this, and that doesn't matter. Whereas Samsung is obviously starting to think about it in a different way.
Yeah, there are watch companies that feel the same way about smartwatches.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, if people vote with their feet and their foot traffic, do you think that white good manufacturers and device manufacturers like boilers and washing machines and vacuums will be forced to forward integrate, or will it backward integrate from the platform providers, as you said, with the Nest, where they start producing boilers and washing machines to get you into their ecosystem? Which way do you think it will go?
You won't be able to buy a consumer good that's not connected. Connected will be the default option. You'll have to work very hard. Well, you'll have to go to eBay, I suspect, to find a vintage fridge.
You buy a jammer.
Or a jamming device, but then everything shuts down, I mean, a smartwatch without being tethered to a phone, well, it's a digital watch, isn't it? It's got no utility really at all. It just tells the time. So for it to have any utility at all, it needs to be connected.
So do you think that consumers are going to need that? There will be a day 10 years from now where it seems stupid that the boiler can't talk to the internet.
Absolutely, and not 10 years.
I think the problem isn't that the consumers are going to say this is my problem. It's that so the market space is a game theory approach to economics, like it or not. As soon as Samsung makes the move into introducing internet connectivity and monetizing the data that it has from its nodes, by the way, GE is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So those are the two biggest players. That's it. You've moved the equilibrium point, and anybody that doesn't follow gets left behind because of the profits. So they'll just become irrelevant in the market space. It's an inevitable event.
How many of you have kids? Small kids. How many of you have given them a touch device? An iPad or something? Yeah. How many of the kids go to the TV and try to touch it and they're like, no! So I think that's the first phenomenon of this, that in 10 years, exactly, the kids of today will be like, why is this device not connected? It's like, probably that's going to happen with the cars, like, why does this use this stupid thing called gas or petrol?
I suspected the same. I just wanted to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I hope all beds will become smart beds, and I hope we made it happen, so.
One last question?
Not so much a question, but just something I thought worth contributing. So in 1980, in an effort to come up with some data protection some guidelines, the OECD produced some recommendations. And this is in the 1980. One of the 7 was purpose. Data should only be used for the purpose stated and not for any other purpose. So it's not like this stuff isn't understood about data rights and what companies and whatnot should be doing. Within Europe, these guidelines are implemented in different ways. So now we're at that point where it's getting a bit, it's just interesting that, like you said about here, take this smart alarm, and it's maybe used for something else.
It's a little bit of the boiling frog syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah.
How far are you going to push the boundaries so the consumer doesn't complain?
It probably will result in a panorama, and then then we'll get serious about it. But
Just like you were talking about with the drones, you were saying, the drones are great, so much utility, so much value. There'll be an inflection point when something happens, and then suddenly, there'll be a huge knee-jerk reaction.
And it's a point of some of the, not sure if this it's a bit off topic, but it gets back to the data question, is that when will the data become relevant? So we've, for example, talked with a lot of insurance companies saying that, we get pretty valuable health data on your consumers, and it's actually pretty easy to get. Like, we could remove cardiovascular disease or hospitalizations caused by that pretty easily. You know what they said? We don't give a shit. If if you give us 100,000 people today that have cardiovascular disease, we're just going to increase all the prices for everybody, and we'll cover it. So it requires a transformation of some of these existing industries so that individual data actually becomes also that it matters. And then, for example, Beddit's data becomes a lot more valuable again. But before that, we're focused on just selling this.
In terms of future data, it might go in an alternative way as well. So if you use blockchain-like technologies, the data can become private again. And by private, I mean you will have the right to monetize it as you see fit. So then you might have Google that provides you services. And then if you opt to get both services for free, and we will generate tons and tons and tons of data, which will be immensely valuable. So then you can sell it to Google for all the free services. Or you might decide that you'll actually put all your data out there in an auction format for every single other company to bid for your data. And then you'll decide either if you want to make it private, anonymized, or whichever part of the data you want to disclose. And then you just sell it off. So it's the same arrangement, exactly same economics, but working more in the favor of consumer who would have much more choice.
You say that you're doing that company?
It's just thinking out loud.
I mean, the concept right now, to be honest, the concept that you're raising is data brokerage is starting already. There are companies that are looking at data brokerage.
Yes, but currently it's just something that consumers give consent because nobody reads any type of consent forms, and then it's being monetized again and again by the companies with no sort of immediate control by
the individual.
It's also a lot of the conversation about value in terms of it's talking about dollars, and actually the blockchain needn't operate around those manifestations of money, and that's that flip. When you begin to understand that the data is a currency, and actually it's about how you log it, how you build a ledger for it, in which it isn't distributed through third parties such as banks.
I think really looking at time and so on, really like to end with the panel just a 30-second brief. Where do you see smart homes going in the next 2 to 5 years? Just Simon, I'll let you start from that end, and we'll walk away this way. What are we going to see?
More confusion, more frustration. It's going to be the early adopters that are going to be the trailblazers, and I guess then you kind of have your friends have a really cool thing, and I guess I'll have to have that too. So I think we'll see more traction in the smart home, but I think we'll see more fragmentation where consumers will start getting behind a particular standard, and OEMs as well. So I think hopefully, we'll get the impression, a better idea of who's going to be at least winning the players by that point.
I think for new builds, we're going to start seeing them put these products in a standard. We're going to see light switches, plug sockets going in a standard. We're already starting to see wireless heating systems go in as standard because that's what the customers are demanding. We're probably going to see the same with fridges, with cookers, with washing machines that start at a certain time when the cost of electricity is cheaper. So I think we're definitely going to start seeing it go in as standard in new homes.
I just hope that we'll see a few of the first really mass consumer focused successes, like a few really successful things. I could think that Nest is one, but I think we're at the pinnacle of the sort of hype about IOT, which will mean that it'll crash a bit, and then we'll get back on the rising track. And let's see if it's smart beds or if it's something else. But I think the consumers will decide, and we'll see what the consumers decided initially.
Thanks. I think we're going to start seeing people and humans giving up a lot of the decisions that we make because we don't want to make them. If you run out of eggs, it'll just link directly to Tesco and get you more eggs. And the idea of individually, week by week, choosing what you want to buy would be just really strange, because your home will be connected, and if you're buying the same things, milk, bread, all the essentials, that will just be done automatically, and then you can add things on as you want. Online shopping is a fantastic service for recommendations, all that kind of stuff, and that will start linking to the home. The cost of these products will start coming down, obviously, as start getting more scale and new builds come in. And this is just going to become normal. So the decision on should I turn the iron off will start to be taken away from us, and it'll just do it. And I think that is a fascinating development and something that is very, very interesting. But it brings up a wider issue, particularly around the idea and the concept of artificial intelligence, is when do we stop giving away things to machines to let it do things for us? And that for me is something that needs to be managed very, very carefully, because we as a species are, many of us, quite lazy, and if we can get a machine to do something, or if we don't want to do something, or get someone else to do the sleep for us, I don't know, we'll start giving these things away, and that is a big, big issue. So on the wider scale, we're going to start giving things away within the home, but also through artificial intelligence. I think that the shorter term problem is communication. I've got 8 devices. In 2 years' time, I'll probably have 20 devices. I'm not going to go into 20 different apps and try and fiddle around with them and adjust the settings and do all that kind of thing. So it's going to take companies like yours, it's going to take companies like mine, that will be able to make it granny-proof, my mum-proof. If my mum can use it, we're fine. If she's to do if, then, but what, she calls it the IT crowd, instead of the IT crowd. So the level of nerdiness is just not quite there, but we have to make it simple. And we're banking on speech. People can talk, they can say what they want. We just have to be able to understand it, interpret it, turn it into machine code to then launch an activity and turning something on or turning something off. And yeah, that's okay.
Thank you very much. Join me in saying thank you very much to the panel.